I'll just have you start from the beginning.
Back about, it's either 2001 or 2002, we had a buck that we hadn't really seen that year until the first morning of rifle season.
This was before antler restriction laws in Pennsylvania, so if you were to hear or see of a buck that was 16 inches wide or bigger, that was a big buck.
My son Shannon was on watch that first morning, and this huge buck came running up over a bank to him, and everything happened so fast that the buck was turned and gone before he could get a shot at him. And we fortunate to have snow that year. For the whole deer season we had snow on the ground, and I could tell this deer's track because just by its size, it was huge. We called him Bigfoot because he just had such a awesome foot on him. But we kind of figured out where he was coming and going from every morning. So I had a spot where I could go and check, and if his track hadn't gone back through, we knew he was still in our hunting area. And I just started until I found his track, and we'd get 2 or 3 guys to get around on watch, and I would stay on that track till he went across somewhere. And we had, he seemed to like to run the open field. And we had one occasion where my son had, I had just the 2 of us were hunting, and I had him on watch. And I pushed the deer out past him, but he was watching some turkeys that were there, and the deer got through before he realized what was going on. He got one quick shot at him as he went into the woods across the field. Another time with the same type deal, my son-in-law Doug was hunting with me, and I picked up the track and kept on it, and he run the open fields again, and Doug got one real long range shot at him.
I brought my scope up, and I could see that one of them had what looked like a tree on his head. I figured that's got to be Bigfoot. I took a shot at probably over 400 yards as they were running, knowing there's no way I could have touched it, but it was a clean shot, nothing to bother, but I never touched him.
It went a couple days that we didn't come across him.
Unfortunately, my father-in-law had already killed a deer, a buck, in archery, and was carrying a stick instead of a rifle. So he was our dog for the season. A few days went by, and I think it was the second week of the season. I'd gotten home early from work. It was a cold, cold day. We'd probably had a few inches of fresh snow, and I told my wife, she was off from work that day. I said, I'm gonna just go over in the cuts over in front of our house, see if I can find a buck to come straggling through. So I went over and just sat, alone, quiet, cold. Meantime, my father-in-law stopped at the house, had coffee with my wife, and she told him what I was doing. Well, him being the guy he is, he thought, well, I'm gonna go put a quick little drive on for Doug. Well, he went up and parked his gator side by side and came through a small patch of woods, driving the woods towards me, kicked out a buck. It was a small 6-point. It was legal, but I was fussy and I didn't shoot. Well, by the time my father-in-law got to me, it was getting dark, getting late in the day. I was froze, ready to go home. He says, well, come on, let's walk back to my gator instead of you walking home, and I'll give you a ride to be a little warmer. As we walked out, he was walking in front of me, we were in conversation, and all of a sudden he said, whoa. And he's looking down, and the tracks that he'd walked in to put the little drive on for me had deer prints in them, and one of them was Bigfoot. Well, he lit right up. He said, he's still alive, he's close. Now this is a week and a half after all the action. We've seen him earlier. He says to me, I know how to get that buck. If we get another guy, we need 3 guys, a driver and 2 watchers. Call your dad. So I called my dad, Ken Welch, and said, Dad, Bigfoot's running loose in the neighborhood, and we think we know how to get him. So the next morning, my dad was at my house at daylight. My father-in-law had this plan, and knew where he was bedded, and he was with this doe that we figure he was chasing. She was probably in heat. And he says, I think we can get this buck.
So I came up through the woods looking for this deer, and I heard a racket in front of me, and here he came down the bank right to me with a doe. We had a doe with him. I don't have a gun. I'd already killed a deer in archery season. So I can never turn a deer when I want to, but I started screaming and hollering and waving my arms, and I'll be darned if he didn't turn around, and him and her both. I think she had a lot of influence, but back up over the bank they went, and out into the open fields again.
The radio cracks. Here he comes. Where I was sitting, I got the gun ready. I was all set to go, and I could see a few minutes later, I could see deer coming through the brush, but we're talking a quarter of a mile away. But there was snow, so you could see the silhouette of them against the snow. Probably 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, and they're headed right for my father.
The doe stopped, so he stopped. And it was heavy goldenrod and stuff. And when he stopped, he was looking over at the doe. But I remembered when he stopped, he was heading right straight towards me. And I had a good rest over that bale of hay up there, and I could just make out his neck. And I shot, and I hit him right in the brisket.
Then all of a sudden, my radio cracks. Bigfoot is down.
And then K-Dub's not real excitable. He come on the radio and it says, Bigfoot is down.
He's down.